in a time in Yu-Gi-Oh! With some of the most powerful decks are abundantly clear and some of the most powerful cards are a complete terror to deal with. But right now, there are actually some strategies that players are secretly using to be able to counter some of the top cards in the game. Let's go ahead and jump on in. What's going on with ya, big dog? And it is an amazing day for Yu-Gi-Oh! I hope that's your day phenomenal. But if it isn't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. Now, I know I haven't done this in quite some time, so allow me to be able to celebrate because it's actually Update Monday! Just a really quick time where I get you guys out of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Space for one quick second to help improve you on your personal lives. Today, big dog, I want to re-emphasize that just because you're in a bad situation doesn't mean it's the end of the world. You can always find something really, really good. Now, ironically, if it wasn't for my rheumatoid arthritis, I wouldn't be having these type of conversations with you. It became an inspiration of hope, something that we could talk about every single Monday to help you become a better person. So I'm telling you right now, and that's exactly what we're doing in Yu-Gi-Oh! At this point in time. I can tell right now, rogue enthusiasts are completely sick of the same Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategies taking over. But the cool thing is, because of Rage of the Abyss and the ban list, there are some really good decks that players are taking advantage of the situation with. And that's what's been really crazy about Yu-Gi-Oh! Because players have been making a really good time out of a terrible situation. I think one of the best parts about Yu-Gi-Oh! is figuring out those strategies that can actually take on the top dog decks. And if you guys know a strategy, then go ahead and let us know down below in the comment section. I'll also even put personal deck lists on my Patreon as a special thank you for helping me with my editors. But one of the biggest situations that players are dealing with is Mulcharmy Fuwalos off of Rage of the Abyss. This card by itself has so many players up in arms. Is it even a good Yu-Gi-Oh! Card? Seriously? Come on, is it? I personally don't think that it's worth $450 for a playset, and I even made a video talking about that in detail why I think it's a flawed Yu-Gi-Oh! Card. Inside of that video is actually a flaw that we are going to be exploiting. Mulcharmy Fuwalos can only be activated when you have no cards on your field, and a lot of times players have to immediately shotgun it. Well, there's a really powerful Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategy that players are not paying attention to enough, and it even has the accolades to back it up. Labyrinth is crazy right now, and I'm not saying this because I'm the mommy milkers captain. Hear me out, guys. We're getting very close to No November, so I may not ever mention Labyrinth again. There's a few reasons why Labyrinth is so good. While the deck does special summon from the extra deck and the main deck, it doesn't need to special summon from the main deck or the extra deck. Essentially, anytime your opponent shotguns Mulcharmy Fuwalos, you're not on a clock to special summon a ton. You can set your cards face down and then just let them go. And if you're ever in the situation where they shotgun it on their opening turn, then you can just use your cards to summon from the deck in response. And I'd be a liar if I said that that's the only reason why the deck is good. There is a new trap card that came out in Rage of the Abyss that you guys are gonna have to get really familiar with. Dominus Impulse is the strongest card out of the entire set. Labyrinth takes it to a whole nother level. It can actually get that second effect of Dominus Impulse. You know, the effect that allows you to be able to destroy the card you're negating because the deck is filled with so many traps. And the drawbacks of Impulse? What earth monsters? What wind monsters? Okay, the light you might get me with Nibiru and Elder Entity Intis, but what light monsters? There's almost zero repercussions for playing one of the strongest hand traps in the game with this deck, especially seeing that Labyrinth can naturally search it. And another one of the best things about this deck is that it's almost like branded. Anytime a new normal trap card comes out, it's essentially Labyrinth support. Hell, you might as well just call it Labyrinth Dominus Impulse. It's the same thing. Labyrinth has been one of those timeless masterpieces in Yu-Gi-Oh! But one thing that actually hasn't been is the Fiendsmith engine. It's really weird that I'm saying this because the Fiendsmith engine was so dominant last format. Everything was playing Fiendsmith. Snake Eyes Fiendsmith, Yugioh Fiendsmith, Dark Magician Fiendsmith. I don't know who would really play that, but they a dog if they are. But now that Rage of the Abyss has came out, the new hot thing is Azamina. Azamina this, Azamina Snake Eyes, Azamina. Hell, if Azamina Dark Magician came around, I wouldn't even say anything. Now, this doesn't mean that the Fiendsmith cards are bad, but around 30% of the topping decks played Fiendsmith, and that has resulted in Fiendsmith becoming a $120 card to about a $60 card per copy. It's almost like somebody told you to sell engravers, but you ain't want to listen. The ease and accessibility of Engraver has gotten players experimenting, and there's actually quite a few decks that can take full advantage of this easier to get Fiendsmith engine. Take, for example, Memento, the Meme Team, the Bone decks. Memento got yet another another piece of support, and I don't think that it's slowing down anytime soon, Memento Akron allows your level 9 monsters to be able to attack directly. You can imagine the big Bone Daddy and Teclecula 5,000 attack just beating your face in. I can't, because I ain't gonna put myself in that situation. I'll see myself out. Thank you very much. But Memento uses the Fiend engine as a part of its engine. The deck can sometimes be interrupted fairly easily, so the Fiendsmith engine is almost like bait. Does your opponent stop the Fiendsmith cards and then you follow with your Mementos? Or if your Memento cards get interrupted, well, the Fiendsmith brings you right back on track. It's one of the perfect marriages that you see when a strategy actually can serve as engine to your strategy, but it's even better when the cards can serve as making bigger inboards or fixing a lot of problems that Unchained has. Unchained is a very, very, very powerful Yu-Gi-Oh deck. Look at my eyes. Powerful. Oh, something got my eye. Don't look at my eyes, just know it's powerful. Unchained takes a different approach as Memento, as this deck is already really hard to interrupt. It just uses the Fiendsmith cards to make even bigger boards, and of course, getting into DDD Wave King Caesar a little bit easier. That card is still a complete monster against some of the best decks in the entire game, but only certain strategies like Unchained can bring the full potential out of it. Instead of having this as a duo, I think it's better to have it as a trinity, because Chimera is still another great Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that gets even better with Fiendsmith. You can argue that Chimera is the strongest Fiendsmith or even the strongest Azamina strategy because it naturally can use those illusion and fiend monsters. And one of the best things about Chimera is that it is splendid going against the decks that play Fiendsmith and Azamina. Because their inboard just so happens to have a fiend, illusion, or sometimes even both, super polymerization allows them to get their combo started without ever committing another card. That's a nice fiend and illusion monster, you guys. It'd be ashamed if it turned into a Chimera monster. What I love about all three of these decks is that they have very natural board breaking capabilities, but also are very fluid strategy. When under duress through your opponent's best cards, you can just change the tempo of your deck to be able to respond accordingly. These are some of the most skilled Yu-Gi-Oh strategies in the game, and it's really cool to know that their success still follows them. Every single one of these strategies have topped or won a regional over the past few weeks. So big dog, like I said, I'm not just giving you some bum strategies. All these Yu-Gi-Oh decks stand 10 toes down. They hot, they cooking, and they might just cook you if you don't know anything about them. But let's just say you can't afford the Fiendsmith engine. It's fine. Not everybody can. Broke ass motherfucker. Get your money up, not your funny up. I mean, huh? I ain't say that. My son did.
Get your money up, not your funny up, gang.
Fortunately enough, players have still been labbing without Fiendsmith to make their decks incredibly powerful. And if you guys ever do need a guide on budget decks, I happen to have a tier list that you guys can go ahead and check out, and that will get you some really cheap Yu-Gi-Oh decks with tons of potential. This deck is cheaper and does have a ton of potential, and actually just evolved from a stun type Yu-Gi-Oh strategy. White Force is pretty crazy right here. What you mean White Force, Konami? What happened to the Black Force? White Force has been topping at a consistent pace, and the best thing about it is that it can synchro summon on your opponent's turn. But there's some really cool things that players have been doing with that fact. There's a new spell card called Final Bringer of End Times, which allows you to destroy one monster you control and one card your opponent controls. It's a quick play spell card, so it pretty much can be used at any given time. But as you know, innovative Yu-Gi-Oh players will always find a way to break a Yu-Gi-Oh card. Because of how Final Bringer of End Times works, it will attempt to destroy both cards no matter what. So even if you do get rid of the card that you're supposed to destroy, your opponent still loses their card. And that's where White Forest cards come in. Because your White Forest monsters have quick effects to be able to return monsters to your extra deck, and Woes of the White Forest allows you to synchro summon on your opponent's turn, layering the Final Bringer of End Times with these effects essentially allows you to be able to dodge the destruction of your cards and get rid of your opponent's cards, which I think is pretty cool. It's just another way of players using innovation with the new cards of Rage of the Abyss to be able to take down some of the top tier Yu-Gi-Oh strategies. And the best part about White Forest is that it's actually really good. White Forest is pretty crazy because it's a deck that doesn't need hand traps to go second and destroy your opponent's board. Hell, it doesn't even need a battle phase, so evenly matches one of them once. All this card really needs is $1 and a dream, a spell card to discard, and an additional supplemental engine. Now, you could play Runic, you can play Fiendsmith, you can play Toy Box, or you can play Centurion. And Centurion just so happens to be another one of those decks that we gotta talk about. Like the other strategies before, if you play the deck correctly, you can hit the trifecta. You can play around cards like Mulcharmy Fuwalos, you can play around cards like like Dimension Shifter. Heck, in this particular strategy, you can even play Dimension Shifter. And of course, if you play the deck well enough, you can win some major events. Centurion is really crazy because it's another strategy that can use Final Bringer of End Times thanks to stand-up Centurion allowing you to be able to synchro summon, but also as a deck that is a supplemental engine, meaning it can be used in so many different strategies or played as a pure deck to dominate. The deck's pretty straightforward. It's summon Cosmic Blazar Dragon and proceed to watch your opponent cry trying to stop this card. And with the new support in Centurion Primera Premise, the deck becomes a lot more consistent, which was very much needed. Now, big dog, I think it's time for me to talk about one last strategy. And I like to call this segment a little bit of cope or cook. It's mainly because Cali be spinning the wheels and he be cooking with it, but some of y'all say I cope. Hear me out when I say this. Dragon Link is actually dangerous. In a world where everyone is looking for Omni negations, Dragon Link just got theirs again. After losing Baron, Warlord, and Appaloosa Bull of the Goddess, we have an almost in-theme negation monster that not any deck can use. Hell, we might be the only deck that can use it. I think Red Eye's Black Full Metal Dragon is a crazy good card for Dragon Link. The first is that it is searchable through Black Metal Dragon, so it's already winning. Essentially, just a normal summon of a Black Metal Dragon gets you to Red Eye's Full Metal Dragon, which can use its effect to search the Metal Morph. No, not regular Metal Morph, Max Metal Morph. Max Metal Morph allows you to turn any of your Dragon monsters back into Red Eye's Full Metal Dragon, and this big dog is a card that can stop any of your opponent card effects. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you and say that the Bestial monsters are tough right now. They're okay. They can be really good against Light and Dark decks, obviously, and can be pretty decent against Azamina, cutting off their follow-up. I also think the best thing that they do have going for them is Branded Regain, so even if the cards aren't serving as a form of interruption, using Regain to bring back Dispaddle or Magnuma just feels way too good to give up. Dragons also have that thing where they can pivot to different scenarios depending on the situation, and I think with the right player, they can see a ton of success. But let me know, what do you think are some crazy powerful Yu-Gi-Oh decks that players are using right now? And of course, big dog, I'm gonna need you to check out those videos as I talked about. Don't think I ain't brought them up here for you to look at. I hope you're having an amazing day, and of course, I'll catch you on the next video.